All right, guys, people that are still around, come on in. Come learn about Monero. Everybody ran away after the Ross presentation, which is understandable. What's that? There's not enough privacy pairs. All right, we can hit that in Q&A. My name is Doug Tuman. I'm going to be talking about Monero. Guys, come on, try to round some people. Let's get some people in here learning about Monero today. Yeah, Ross was definitely is a tough act to follow, right? But actually pretty appropriate. Mad respect to Ross, by the way. Mad respect to Ross. He has done a tremendous amount for the movement, for growing cryptocurrency. He was really the first crypto entrepreneur. He built the first useful product for cryptocurrency, which happened to be a dark market. Satoshi himself, when he launched Bitcoin, had included some code for potential open and free marketplace. And Ross was the first person to bring that to fruition, for better or worse. Thankfully, for better eventually, he got out. And here we are a decade later. And while a lot has seemingly changed, a lot really hasn't changed in terms of actual real adoption. From when Ross was around, growing adoption for peer-to-peer digital cash use cases, there actually hasn't been that much growth in terms of real use, real-world adoption of peer-to-peer digital cash. And so that's what I'm most passionate about. That's what I've been working on. I see Monero as the best tool for being digital cash, but I'll get into it all. I guess I should go through my slides here, so let's go ahead. First slide. Who is Douglas Tuman? All right, this is probably the most boring part of the presentation. I'm a civil engineer, just a nerd. I'm actually an attorney as well, a patent attorney. I ran for US Congress in 2020 as a pro-Monero candidate in Nassau County, New York. It was pretty unique, pretty crazy times. It was when COVID hit. I was one of the first people to actually get COVID in Nassau County. And I quickly came to the realization that it was a scam. It was a scam. I was out on the streets campaigning, trying to get them to reopen Nassau County very early, in early spring 2020. I saw the writing on the wall. I saw where things were going. And I embraced my libertarian values and got the word out. And actually, I did quite well. I was nominated, supported by the local Republicans, and I ran in a primarily Democratic district. This is U.S. Congress. It was the same time George Santos was running. Anybody here ever hear of George Santos? Like, everybody knows George Santos, right? I was running in the district right next to him. We both ran at the same time in 2020. I actually arguably did even a little better in 2020 because I was in a more Democratic district. We both lost. I got like 45% of the vote. He went on to run again in 2022, and he won. I didn't. And that was because I saw how the sausage gets made when I was running for Congress. It's a lot of work, a lot of effort, and you deal with a lot of people who try to influence you, manipulate you, before you even get into Congress, before you even get elected. They're there. They see that you're one of the people running. If they see that you have a serious race, I was the nominated Republican. From day one, they are essentially trying to co-opt you, you know? Getting letters from AIPAC asking me to write essays on various topics. And if I didn't respond, they would just assume that my viewpoint was one way or the other. Things like that. And then just dealing with the local scene. So I kind of got back to my cypherpunk roots, right? I realized the best way I can make an impact is to just follow through with my cypherpunk idealism, right? And focus on Monero and focus on Monero adoption. The reason I ran in 2020 is because I saw where the puck was headed, and I was worried that they might try to ban Monero. This is in 2020. I was concerned that might happen. I kind of saw the writing on the wall, and I thought, we need somebody in Congress who's going to be there and who's going to make the right arguments, right? Who's going to talk about the importance of a digital cash utility, reasons why that aligns with American values, and try to make that argument that free speech money should be something that everybody in the US of A should have access to, right? That the US government should actually sanction and it'll be okay with people using these tools, just like they should be okay with people using encryption, right? And I thought we needed somebody in Congress, on the floor of Congress, to make those arguments if they ever were to try to ban it. Not that I'd single-handedly be able to stop it, but at least we'd have somebody making those arguments. And the reason I thought that is because to date, in 2020, there really was nobody stepping up making those arguments as an elected official. In fact, whenever Bitcoin was ever brought up, I'm sure you guys all remember if you were tuning in from the early days, it was ever brought up in Congress, and they said, well, we're worried that people might use this on the dark market. We're worried that it might be used to fund terrorism. We're worried that it could be used for money laundering. The grand response was, well, don't worry, Congressman. Actually, Bitcoin is more traceable than the US dollar, so we're good. In fact, it's basically admitting it's a surveillance tool, guys. So we're all good. And so I thought we needed somebody to make the other argument. Long story short, I lost, and then a letter got sent to everybody that donated to my campaign. A letter in the mail. Everybody that donated to my campaign. Somebody went through the effort finding out. I mean, obviously it's public information, but it takes some work. And they anonymously sent a threat letter. I don't know if you could see it. I can't even read it from here. You're flushing your money down the toilet. Next time, Google Monero ISIS and Monero Tuman before making a donation to them. And then, it shows a picture of me, a picture of the Monero symbol, ISIS, and it says Doug Tuman supports Monero, which is used by terrorists, and effectively it says we know you donated for him, and you won't hear from us again if you don't donate if you don't donate to him again in the future, but you will if you do. ... Basically threatening all these people, saying if Doug runs again and you donate, you're going to hear from us. Whatever that means. Is it another letter? Is it something more nefarious? But it was pretty threatening. And not everybody, but I got a lot of text. This is 6 months after I ran and lost. So somebody was trying to prevent me from running again. And I got text message from family members, people that donated, everybody, and saying, Doug, what is this letter? Should I be concerned? And it just turned into a good Monero conversation, if anything. But just to show you, a little bit about myself and what I'm all about, that is who Doug Tuman is. If these guys could hit the next slide, I'll try to go a little faster now. So how did I get to Monero? I like to say all roads lead to Monero. The first crypto I actually bought, believe it or not, was Dogecoin. Christmas Eve, 2013. Dogecoin had just launched. I had heard about Bitcoin. Actually, the first time I really heard about Bitcoin was when they were trying to shut down the Silk Road. I think it was Chuck Schumer, Senator Schumer from New York, was giving a speech. Then they're using this Bitcoin thing on the dark web. I was like, what? And I just assumed it was something that would be shut down. I didn't know Satoshi Nakamoto had solved the Byzantine generals problem. I didn't know they figured out how to actually create a decentralized net. I didn't realize any of that. I just thought it was another attempt at digital, because I had seen, the Liberty Fighters try to do other things before Bitcoin. So I just assumed it was another failed attempt, that it was centralized. But 2013, Christmas Eve, I was like, you know what? Let me buy some of this Dogecoin. I read an article about it. I'm like, I missed out on the Bitcoin scam. I'm like, I'll just buy $50 worth and I'll turn it into $5,000 worth. I bought it. Next morning, I woke up, Christmas Day. I'm with my family and everything. They're like, what? Like, why the long face? It's Christmas. I'm like, well, I just went on this thing called Reddit, and I sent somebody $50 in PayPal, and they sent me some Dogecoin, and my family's looking at me like, what the fuck are you talking about? they sent me some Dogecoin, and then I woke up this morning to check my wallet, and it was all gone. Because I had them send it to an online wallet. That's like rule number one, right? Not your keys, not your coins, right? And I had them send it to an online wallet where I wasn't actually holding my private key, and they fleeced the entire, like everybody that had an online wallet got fleeced. It was basically everybody's Dogecoin at the time. And this was when after it had first launched, 2013. So that was the best 50 I had ever lost. Although, if I still had that Doge today, I don't know. I'd probably be a very wealthy Doge man. But it was the best 50 I lost because it sent me down the Bitcoin rabbit hole instantly, that same day. Because I was like, there's no way this technology is so poorly made where somebody could just come steal all my crypto. I'm like, what is the point of it? So I'm Googling, starting to read about Bitcoin, read the Satoshi white paper. Like I said, I'm like a patent attorney who's going down that road. So like, oh, here's a white paper. It's kind of like reading a patent. I'm like, let me sit down, read this thing. Sat down, read the white paper. I was in. I was a Bitcoin maxi overnight. I like this is amazing. They did something that nobody's ever done before. They've created peer-to-peer digital cash, and that's what I was most excited about. But when I eventually realized is that Bitcoin, as designed, in my opinion, does not really live up to being peer-to-peer digital cash. We could go ahead and go to the next slide. So yeah, all right, I just want to make sure I'm not skipping things. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't until I actually started using Bitcoin and that I realized it wasn't peer-to-peer digital cash, pretty much like right off the bat. And this is like early in my Bitcoin time, right? Like, whatever, 2014, 2015. I'm just like, let me go buy something. I found a place where I can spend some Bitcoin, send some Bitcoin, and then I went on the Block Explorer to go make sure my Bitcoin went through. Like, oh, I gotta make sure it went through. And as I'm looking at it, I'm realizing, wait, if I could look at this Block Explorer, anybody can look at it. As I'm sending my friends Bitcoin, which I did in the early days, they would be like, oh, thanks, Doug. And they're like, oh, by the way, I see you have, X amount of Bitcoin. That's pretty cool. I'm like, huh, that's weird. I'm like, when I pay people cash, they don't automatically know how much money I have in my bank account. I'm like, this is not cash. It's not cash. So I instantly woke up to that. That was, I don't know, 2015, 2016, and now I'm just interested in that. I'm seeing people talking about that, like, one day there's going to be these chain analysis companies where they're going to start analyzing all this stuff. And I'm like, and I'm getting very interested in that. And then I hear about Monero for the first time. Is Peter Todd talking about it in a podcast. Anybody here know Peter Todd? I'm sure you guys have heard. Wow, I'm surprised not as many hands go. You guys should at least know about him. He's a OG Bitcoiner. Some think he's Satoshi Nakamoto. He actually spoke at Monerotopia conference. I don't think he's Satoshi Nakamoto, by the way. Somebody heard me saying that the other day, and they thought I was like bought and sold on the fact that, no, but so other people do. And Peter Todd started talking about Monero. It was just a couple of cents. And he's like, they're working on essentially a new and improved Monero, a new and improved Bitcoin. They figured out how to make Bitcoin private, and that was Monero. I was like, oh, this is interesting. So I started watching it, started following it. Actually, it wasn't until this guy, I don't know if you mind, Mark, I don't know if you mind me pointing you out. I don't know. In 2016, maybe, Mark started talking about it on YouTube. And he had already had quite the following, I think, in crypto. He was a Bitcoiner that was getting into altcoins. And I'll let you say some words later, Mark, if you want. And he started talking about Monero. Like, oh, I'm looking at this other project. It's trying to be digital cash. There's also, Bitcoin Cash, and that really got me looking close. I think it was even before Bitcoin Cash, and so that's when I started to really go down the rabbit hole. And when I started to look at Monero closely, I realized Monero is what Bitcoin was meant to be. Monero is not simply a private coin. It is the untraceable and unstoppable version of Bitcoin. I think that whole sentence is key, all those words. Untraceable and unstoppable. We often talk about Monero as it's just a privacy coin. It's not just a privacy coin. It's a true cryptocurrency. It's what crypto was meant to be. Privacy is a very vital, important aspect to that, but the other vital aspect is it being unstoppable. And I'll get into that. I think arguably Monero is better built to not be co-opted than Bitcoin is. It is fungible digital cash that no corp or government can co-opt. Its purpose is to disrupt the state financial surveillance apparatus. Anybody know that? Remember that sticker? No, I guess so. No real all right. I see one. No real Monero OGs, but this was Monero's initial marketing, right? Don't buy Monero, the worst marketing campaign ever of any crypto, but also the best. Because what it did was it filtered out all the moon boys from the early days. Monero was quite toxic about it in a good way, kind of reminding people from the early days, like, no, bro, this isn't about speculating and just buying a shit ton of Monero and then hoping it turns into a lot of fiat dollars and selling it. You know what? Don't even buy Monero, right? Don't buy it. In fact, what you should do is just use Monero. Don't buy Monero. Cryptocurrencies are harmful to the banking system and may weaken the state apparatus. This was the meme of the early days of Monero, and that culture has since stuck with Monero. And I think that's one of the things that do give it another great advantage compared to other cryptos is its culture and its ethos, and that's unified. It has all different types of people that use Monero. Some people that I don't really agree with much politically, some people that I do, but it's a permissionless network, it's permissionless digital cash, anybody can use that. But despite that, despite all the different groups of people that are using it, you know, people, the Nazis are seemingly using it, using Monero, because I see them on Twitter and they don't like me very much, because I don't really agree with their other philosophies in life, but they see value in using Monero. Because if you're going to if you're running a fringe political movement and you need to raise money, you'd be an idiot not to use Monero. You'd be an idiot to use Bitcoin. And we saw this with the trucker rally, right? There's an example. But my point is, despite all these different philosophies of people that are using this tool, there's a culture where everybody agrees what this tool is for. And that's for people to live outside of the state surveillance system and to be able to transact peer-to-peer without censorship or surveillance, to be usable, untraceable digital cash at the protocol level. Bitcoin never really had that mantra, maybe from the super early days when people just read the title of the white paper, but it soon got forgotten. It became digital gold, and it's really not even that. I would say it's digital property. Right? It's digital property, and it's really not a good tool for transacting peer-to-peer in a way where nobody can see what you're doing. It's not digital cash. So let's keep going. And I don't want to make this about, this isn't about bashing Bitcoin. I obviously have great respect for Bitcoin. Like I said, I was a Bitcoin maxi. Satoshi is a god. I don't think, Bitcoin is going away anytime soon, if effectively ever, in terms of the lifespan of humanity. But I think it's been co-opted. And I think the states and the powers that be don't mind Monero existing. It's not really doing what it set out to do. When Ross started using it for the Silk Road, it was doing what it was meant to do. That's why they went after Ross. It wasn't because of what he was selling on there. It's because he started using this stuff outside of their system. He created that's the threat. The threat is that we opt out, we ignore them, and we enter into free and open trade among ourselves without any state or corporation being able to take their pound of flesh or surveil us all. And we need the right tool to do that. But that is the threat. And Bitcoin hasn't been able to live up to that promise. Monero is more. It's more of a lot of things. Like I said, most people just think Monero, oh, that's the private version of Bitcoin. There's much more to Monero, and I just want to quickly run through these things, especially for people that are learning about Monero for the first time, so you really understand why this is like a very legitimate technology. And while I said I think Bitcoin is here to stay, I definitely think Monero is here to stay as well. And its purpose will be untraceable digital cash. It will be, I believe, the primary tool that people will use for transacting without being able to be surveilled, right? It's secure in perpetuity. So Monero has something called the tail emission, which people are like, oh, you mean there's more than 21 million coins? Like, that's not a big deal, guys. That was part of the Bitcoin meme. Actually, Monero is actually more scarce than Bitcoin and will be up until 2040. But it has this thing called a tail emission. So there's like 18.6 million Moneros that get mined, and then a steady emission of Monero is emitted thereafter in perpetuity. I think it's like 0.6 Monero every 2 minutes, right? It's 0.6 Monero every 2 minutes. And slowly over time, it will surpass the amount of Bitcoin that exists. But the idea is what that tail emission does is it secures the network. It secures the chain, as we all know, right? The miners secure the chain. Why are they mining? Because they're getting the block rewards. What happens when the block rewards run out? Uh-oh, there's not going to be an incentive to mine. Well, Bitcoiners are like, well, we'll just use transaction fees. Okay, but you have a fixed block size, so that means you're going to have super high transaction fees. So the Bitcoin network, it's not built to be used as cash. Literally, as the more popular it gets, the more people that use it, the higher transaction fees get, and it just breaks down fundamentally. Monero is built to be used as digital cash. It sacrificed having this hard limit, and it also sacrificed having fixed block size. It has actually dynamic block size. And the nature of Monero is literally as you use it more, as there's more transactions are made, it gets cheaper to transact on-chain. It gets cheaper. The transaction fees actually go down instead of up. Plus, you have this small tail emission that's always there, always incentivizing the miners in perpetuity. Bitcoin's future security is arguably more questionable than Monero's. Monero it didn't kick the can down the road. It already added this tail emission because it saw that fundamentally for this thing to work, you need to be able to continue to incentivize the miners. Bitcoin has not crossed that road yet. We don't know what's going to happen really when Bitcoin starts to really approach its 21 million limit, if transaction fees will be enough to secure the network. And so arguably, Monero is more future-proof in terms of its security model. More scarce, like I said, and will be up until 2040. More predictable supply, that point I'm just making, right? So everybody's like, oh, it's only 21 million. The invention of Bitcoin wasn't that it was capped at some number. It's that the emission curve was known and predictable and couldn't be changed. That's what was exciting about it, that we know how much Bitcoin is going to be emitted at any time, and that nobody can go and change that. Nobody can go and smoke a cigar in the back room and be like, all right, I think tomorrow we start printing more Bitcoin. Like, it's not run like the Fed. But it's not that it was 20, it could have been 50 million, it could have been 100 million. But the fact is that we know they're never going to decide to fork and print more. But we don't know that, because you may need more than 21 million. So I would not say that Bitcoin supply is completely predictable. Monero is scalable on-chain, like I said, dynamic block size. It's spendable and useful. Like I said, as people use it more, it becomes cheaper to use. It's a fraction of a cent to send any amount of Monero, whether you're sending $1 worth or $1 million worth. It's private and fungible. That's the one that everybody knows, and that's very important. And it's not just the privacy part, it's the fungible part. One Monero always equals one Monero. Every Bitcoin has a transaction history. One Bitcoin may not equal one Bitcoin. And we've seen that play out time and time again. This fact that Bitcoin is fundamentally traceable. It's built on a transparent ledger that's saved forever. And we've seen that play out in bad ways, where when somebody goes to use their Bitcoin, they're now associated with the things that this Bitcoin has been used for. You know, maybe you received some Bitcoin and it came from somebody who was a dark market vendor or something. Who knows, right? Anything. He was associated with some terrorist organization. And now you're receiving this Bitcoin, and you're like, all right, let me go send this Bitcoin to Coinbase because I want to go sell it for fiat. Like, this Bitcoin's flagged. You know, we're not going to accept this Bitcoin. And we're seeing it play out in even more scary ways. We're going to be doing a talk on the Bitcoin fog case over there in the Monero tent, and that's where somebody was basically implicated for running a Bitcoin mixer in the early days, like 2014, 2013. And it was the fact that Bitcoin was traceable that basically allowed the feds to pin the crime on this guy using not really reliable chain analysis. Just saying like, oh, well, we see that these Bitcoin came your way, and they're like a couple of hops away from from what we know is involved in the Bitcoin fog case, so we're just going to assume that you're the guy. No bueno, no bueno. That's not possible with Monero. With Monero, there's no transaction history to look at. It works like cash. And the fungibility also is extremely important for just playing into how this thing is going to work as a technology. Right? When somebody comes and buys something off of you for cash, when you're selling your car, whatever it may be, you don't have to question where that cash came from. We know that the U.S. government says, we consider cash fungible. And the way it's built, it fundamentally is fungible. There's no history attached to a cash transaction. If there was, it would completely slow down like the cash economy, right? Because everybody would be like, well, I got to go make sure this cash isn't whatever, coming from a bad place, isn't tainted in any way before I can accept that. That does not exist in Monero. There is no way to taint Monero. It's arguably more unconfiscatable than Bitcoin. Everybody says Bitcoin is unconfiscatable. It's one of the most confiscated assets, Bitcoin. I mean, just do the research. It's probably the most, in terms of like people single-handedly having their property taken away from there. I mean, they swooped, look how much property they took away from Ross. Like, you couldn't do that with anything else, where it was just so easy. In a click of a button, they're like, that property that was yours is now ours. Billions of dollars worth of property transferred to Ross. They confiscated it. Bitcoin is confiscatable, because if you could see that somebody has it, you could show up, you can find them, you can take their Bitcoin. With Monero, it's a little more difficult to do that, because privacy is security. If you can't see that I have Monero, it's probably less likely that you'll come and take my Monero. If you come up to me, you say, oh, Doug, I've seen one of your Monero addresses, there's nothing to go look up. Like, I unfortunately, despite the fact that I'm talking about Monero all the time, unfortunately I lost like pretty much all my Monero. It's pretty sad. But I'm hoping I'll work my way back up there. But if somebody comes to me and says, hey, Doug, give me all your Monero, maybe I have one or two on my phone, but it's all I got, bro. Oh no, but I see in this address that went to that address, you have 10 million Monero right here. You can't do that with Monero. With Bitcoin, you can. That's a problem. That's a major, major problem. Censorship-resistant. So I would argue that Monero is more censorship-resistant because the way Bitcoin is mined, it's mined with ASIC miners. And there's just a few mining companies that mine Bitcoin. They basically have a monopoly on Bitcoin. And what does that mean? It means these companies can be approached. Trump can make a phone call. Hey, I need you. I love Bitcoin. It's the best coin, but we got a little problem here. We see that people are using it for bad things, nefarious things, very bad. I'm just going to need to make sure that from now on, we just trace some of these transactions. I'm going to give you some wallet addresses. Just make sure you don't accept any confirm any transactions from those wallets. They're not going to say no. Obviously, Trump wouldn't be as nearly as schooled on Bitcoin as that. But some other department of the federal government can very easily influence these people, and they're going to say yes because they're already the winners in the space. They already have the monopoly. Why wouldn't you shake a hand with the feds and make a deal and be like, all right, we keep our monopoly running the Bitcoin transaction network. We're the ones validating transactions. We do what you say, government. But just, don't let anybody else really mine Bitcoin. And that's effectively what happens, right? Because now they're entrenched. They've made deals with the state. And so that's inevitably going to happen. We've started to see it happen with OFAC coming out with these rules and them being implemented. And then some of these larger farms actually being confronted and asked to not validate certain transactions. So I think Bitcoin has a censorship resistance problem. Monero, however, it's mined with CPUs. There is no ASIC in Monero. The CPU is the ASIC of Monero. We all have CPUs, and we all, and so you can have more CPU power, but you can't build a customized CPU that mines Monero more efficiently than a regular CPU. And so that creates a more egalitarian mining network, and because of that, there basically are no large companies that will ever just be mining Monero because it just doesn't really work out economically. And so that allows for a more decentralized mining network. There's no door to knock on and say, we need you to not validate these transactions, because the people mining network nobody knows who they are. You can mine anywhere. You mine it with the CPU, and so it adds censorship resistance. It's resistant to surveillance because you can't analyze the chain, and it's more secure and private on the network level. This is something too, like most people don't even know. Monero has something called Dandelion++, and basically when you propagate a Monero transaction, you don't know which node it's coming from. So on a network level, it's hard to spy on Monero as well, as long as you run your own node. Moneronodo.com, that's a quick plug. Let's go, next slide. Bitcoin is more susceptible to being co-opted. I basically ran through all this in that last slide. I think the last one's interesting though, right? All transactions can be perfectly taxed. Governments can co-opt Bitcoin by KYCing all ramps and implementing unrealized capital gains. Bitcoin is defanged at that point. It is not starving the state of taxes. It becomes a tool for states to tax better. You can't lose your Bitcoin in a boating accident. So like I said, what the state really fears isn't just that we're playing around with some cryptocurrency and that it even has value, but that if it does have value, that they have no way to extract that value, that we're participating in a market outside of theirs. But with Bitcoin, they're fundamentally hovering over it, surveilling it, and they can come get their pound of flesh whenever they want. And it could end up being quite efficient for them, right? To have everybody using this ledger that they can just look at, right? It's pseudonymous, but the fact is most people obtain it through KYC exchange, so then their person is connected to the address, and they can track and trace thereafter, and they can send you that letter in the mail when they think you owe taxes, because you're transacting in Bitcoin and they can see everything you're doing. Bitcoin doesn't have that. Monero does have that ability to allow, and I'm not saying don't pay taxes. I would never say that. I'm not a stupid man. But I don't think we should have tools that would allow the government to, at will, essentially extract their pound of flesh, right? Where they could just see what everybody's doing and then come and get it. Next slide. Monero's the ultimate hedge to Bitcoin. If nothing else, if you're like, I don't know, Bitcoin is just, it won already. I hear what you're saying, but it's not going to ever compete. If anything else, just realize that in terms of crypto, it's probably the best hedge to Bitcoin on a technological level, because it's just built differently. So you have the Bitcoin protocol, and there's lots of versions of it. Litecoin is a product of the Bitcoin protocol. There's tons of Bitcoin forks. Monero was built from its own protocol called Cryptonote, which was a white paper also put out completely anonymously, like Satoshi Nakamoto. It was Nicholas Van Saberhagen and a group of people. They published this paper. It was the Cryptonote white paper, and basically it was written in response to the Bitcoin white paper in like 2013. And they said, we see Bitcoin, it has all these problems. It's not untraceable digital cash. Monero is, and this is why. And then they proceeded to explain the technologies and how Cryptonote is built differently, so that when you use Monero, you're using a blockchain just like Bitcoin. You're using a public ledger in that anybody has access to it, but it's not a transparent ledger. The primary difference is the ledger of Monero is encrypted. All the transactions are being accounted for. There's no double spends. Nodes are checking all transactions. There's a math there that's making sure that there's no double spends and whatnot, and everything's kept track of just like in Bitcoin, but it's encrypted, so you can't see it. So you can't see who's sending. When you go and look at you could go and look at the Monero blockchain, look at a block explorer. you're really not going to make much sense of it because there's not much to gather from it. So you can't determine who the sender is in Monero. You can't determine the amount sent. It's used something called confidential transactions. And you can't determine who the receiver is. Even the receiver address, there's no address to look up because Monero uses something called stealth addresses. Bitcoin is transparent, Monero is obfuscated. Bitcoin uses ASICs, Monero uses CPUs, and it's built to thwart ASICs. Bitcoin has a fixed block size, Monero has a dynamic. As I said earlier, that really plays into how the security model works and how this thing scales on chain. Bitcoin has a hard cap, Monero has a tail emission. They even have different elliptical curves. Bitcoin uses SECP256K1, and Monero uses ED5519, which is arguably the cypherpunks rate that higher, essentially, on something called safe curves, because they don't think it was potentially exploited by the NSA. So even on that level, on the most basic level, right, the elliptic curve is if you could break the elliptic curve, Bitcoin goes away. And elliptic curve is just a theoretical mathematical thing. I mean, some genius one day with pen and paper could literally potentially break elliptic curve cryptography. I'm not even talking about quantum computers. So even on that level, it's different. Bitcoin has ossified software. Any of those knows like the hijacking Bitcoin story, everything happened, but fundamentally it's ossified. They don't want to evolve. They don't want to add privacy and fungibility on the network layer. They don't want to add scalability. So they've ossified. Monero continues to upgrade. In fact, it has a very big upgrade that's happening hopefully within the next year, something called full chain membership proofs. Next slide. So just real quick of things I've worked on. So in the very early days, there was something called Quick Monero, and it was a way to buy Monero with like cards, like a 7-Eleven type thing was the dream, was the vision. And I actually started, I built like the basic database to do it, and I actually sourced the cards with a little scratch off. And the idea is you'd go to a store, you'd give them cash, and you'd buy one of these cards, and then you'd go redeem it for Monero. Because I saw that, all right, this is a way for people to get Monero with cash. I didn't pursue that idea because I'm in New York, and I got scared out of doing it. I got straight up, got scared out of doing it. I'm like, why am I going to take the risk? So then I started the Monero Talk show. Oh, no, what would we do down here? Oh, I started throwing like Monero after parties at some big Bitcoin events in 2017. I have the Monero Talk show. It's been going on since 2018. That's where I just interview all different types of people in the crypto space, always focused on untraceable digital cash. I've interviewed like a lot of really big Bitcoin OGs. Like it's great, and you can go back and you can watch them talking about Monero in the early days. And I'm here to report. I mean, all of them at least give it respect. Ran for Congress in 2020. Next slide. Started the Monerotopia community show. So we have Monero Talk, which is like me interviewing somebody once a week. And then Monerotopia is a show that happens every Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern. And it's just like a community-based show. So if you're interested in Monero, I recommend you watch the Monero Talks. And I recommend you watch Monerotopia. And on Monerotopia, every week we just let complete noobs jump up on stage, we call it, and you can ask your questions. So that's super cool. I started selling coffee for Monero, where you could tip the farmers with Monero. I have some over there. I've been doing that for a while. And then I started the Monerotopia.com conference, inspired by me attending PorcFest for years. Monerotopia is focused on people using Monero. It takes place in Mexico City, our next one at least. Our last two were there as well. Amazing venue, outdoor venue. And we just have a beautiful Monero accepting marketplace set up. You could come, you could buy all sorts of things, the type of things that you could traditionally buy at PorcFest, if you know what I mean. All sorts of great things with Monero, using Monero, living off Monero, and then we just have talks from the devs, and we have talks from competing privacy tech projects. So I try, there's one right there. I'm trying, right? I try. Despite like I said, the culture of Monero is about untraceable digital cash. I'm trying to help maintain that culture, and part of that is being self-skeptical as a community, if we're truly like an open source, honest project, and being open to other competing technologies. and not being a maxi, right? Not saying, no, you're shitcoin, I don't want to hear it. Like, granted, yes, there are some truly shit coins where people are just trying to completely scam, but there's also things where people are just working on something a little different, and they're like real, they're real devs and they're putting in real time. Xano, for example, which is one of our sponsors at our tent this year, the creator of Xano was the first one to implement the crypto note protocol, which Monero runs on. So am I not going to listen to this guy and pretend like he's like, light years more intelligent than me? I mean, the guy like truly, like, why would I ignore somebody like that? So those are the type of people we get to come down to Monerotopia. And then Monero Nodo, Moneronodo.com, that's a plug-and-play Monero node. I'm a part of that project as well. So it's a way to run your own Monero node. You plug it in, you're up and running. You could use your Cake wallet, and then you can connect to your own Monero node. It's the safest way to use Monero. You don't have to use the Nodo. It's to run your own node. The Nodo just makes it super user-friendly, and it gives you a dedicated device, so it's running 24/7, so you're not like, oh, my computer's off today. But it becomes the safest way to use Monero, because the Monero protocol is super secure, like I said. But one of the potential attack vectors is if, as you're using Monero, you're connected to a nefarious node. You're on Cake Wallet, and a node pops up, and you just click on it, and it's not the Cake Wallet node. It's just somebody running a node, and you connect to that, and they're malicious. They could learn things about you. They can learn things about you. Obviously, they could see when you're using Monero. They know when you're pinging the node, potentially get your IP address, all this stuff. So you should be running your own node. Next slide. So this is what I really want to talk about. So on a couple of the projects, XMR Bazaar, and I'll get into detail on that. That's what I'm most excited about right now. XMRchat.com. That's a way to accept Monero-based super chats. Super user-friendly. And it's all on-chain, no fees. So I'm sure you guys see super chats on YouTube all the time. Somebody's taking a big cut out of that, right? And effectively, they could have potentially debank those people if they don't like the content they're putting out. This is Monero-based, basically running on the Monero network. You can receive Monero-based super chats when you're streaming your YouTube using StreamYard or OBS. Chats pop up. Somebody just sent you $5 in Monero with a little message, and they paid a fraction of a cent because it's the Monero transaction fee, and you get to keep all your tips. Last thing, I did something called Copa Monero in 2024, which is actually really interesting. Not because what it was in Argentina, this small town, for whatever reason, they started getting into, well, actually, there is a reason. They wanted to gamble. They wanted to gamble on soccer, and they found their way to Monero as being like the best tool for doing that. This is in like the middle of nowhere, Argentina, in the Formosa district, a little town called Ibarrete. Some homegrown cypherpunks started using Monero among themselves to trade local cash for Monero and then to gamble online. I went and visited the town. They started accepting Monero at the hotel they have and accepting Monero at the bakery. And a big part of what they were into was their soccer club. Like, the soccer club is the center of their town. That's like where all the action is. And the guys who were into Monero they ran the soccer association in the town. So I teamed up with them. We made a part of the Monerotopia conference, and we threw an amazing soccer tournament among this little town, Ibarrete, and the surrounding towns. And we had like 15 games, and they played, and the winning team took home, I think, like 50 XMR or 40 XMR, which is kind of a big deal for down there. That was a lot of money, and it was well attended by the locals. You could check that out. It was very cool. The last thing I have on my list of like what I want to do in 2025, try to eliminate the bit license in New York. And I won't go, I'm getting ahead now, right? I'm a New Yorker. I've been a New Yorker my whole life. When I got into crypto, I was in New York. I was able to buy, Bitcoin on Coinbase, no problem. But I've never been allowed or able, as a New Yorker, to buy Monero on a centralized exchange. That's crazy. That's crazy. When Trump Coin launched, within like 10 minutes, I could have gone on to Coinbase and bought some Trump Coin, but not Monero. That just blows my mind. What's that? Because it scares the banks. And they've cut off, New York is the financial capital, right? So that was very purposeful what they did there. Because they know a lot of money funnels through New York. A lot of the early crypto money, I'm sure, was coming out of Wall Street and New Yorkers. We had the Bitcoin center down in Wall Street, right? There was a lot of big eyes on that stuff early on. But all those people, they never had easy access to Monero. Till this day, they don't. So we got to get the bit license eliminated. I think now. Oh, I'm gonna go and talk about it right now because in my last 10 minutes here, I'm gonna just focus on XMR Bazaar. But yeah, we got to get the bit license eliminated. It really shows. I mean, Monero is getting delisted from exchanges all around the world. People might think, well, that's a bad thing. It shows that it works. They're delisting it because it works. They, the people that they do banking with, their banking partners are probably pressuring them and telling them, well, because you can't implement the banking regulations, because you can't implement the Bank Secrecy Act, we're just going to kindly ask you to delist it, or we're not going to be doing banking with you anymore. And they bend the knee and they do it. Except for, we have Jesse Powell here in the US. Big round of applause for that guy. That guy's a badass. He was the founder of Kraken, and you can get Monero on Kraken. But guess what, guys? Kraken is not in New York. They left when they implemented the bit license because Jesse Powell was like, F you, I'm not going to stay here if you guys aren't going to allow me to basically sell Monero on an exchange. So yeah, next slide. Let's get it going here because now I want to quickly run through. This is where you guys can find me, at Douglas Tuman on Twitter, at Monero Talk, at Monerotopia. If you ever want to really work on something with me, you have some idea, you want to participate in Monerotopia, you have an idea for something with one of the projects I'm working on, the best way for me to keep track of it is if you just email me, monerotopia@protonmail.com. If you want to volunteer at Monerotopia, if you want to come be a vendor at Monerotopia, if you want to come be a speaker at Monerotopia, any of those things or any of my other projects, send me an email there, and that's the best way I can keep track of it. Next slide. All right. Oh, no, these aren't showing. It's like zoomed in over there. Go to next one. See if you could go now. Yeah, because it's not showing the whole slide. Yeah, is there a way you could fix that? So yeah, what I want to talk to you guys about is XMR Bazaar. That's the project I'm most passionate about right now. I think it's pretty apropos that I'm up here talking about it literally right after Ross Albright gave his talk. Pretty amazing, actually, that we've come this far. So XMR Bazaar, it's not a dark marketplace. It's a clear market. It's for legal goods and services. But I see great value in that, and honestly, it looks like a lot of other people do as well. So the purpose of XMR Bazaar, it's a way for people to sell goods and services peer-to-peer using Monero. It's not decentralized. It's kind of like, think of it like a Craigslist, right? So it's just a listing platform. Because obviously I'm trying to stay out of jail as well, just doing everything by the book here. I don't want to be labeled a money transmitter. I don't want people to say, well, you need a banking license. So we never touch your Monero. XMR Bazaar never touches your Monero. When there's transactions being made, unless you're just buying something from XMR Bazaar. But in terms of transactions being made, we're never a party to the transaction. So when you buy something on XMR Bazaar, you're sending Monero from your personal wallet to the vendor's personal wallet, and it's just going through the Monero network. And it's a pretty powerful idea. Are we able to fix those slides? No. Maybe the other guy. You had somebody else that fixed it early. All right. So let me try to just talk about some of the features here. Right. So. As you might imagine, very simple. You got to create a profile in XMR Bazaar. Very easy to do so. There's no KYC. We don't even ask for an email. You don't even need an email, so you can be completely anon on XMR Bazaar. You create an account, and then the next thing you're asked to do is basically create a messenger, so you can DM with other people, and it walks you through in literally 2 clicks of a button. It has you set up using PGP encryption, which is super cool. And it gives you your PGP key. So that's the only thing with XMR Bazaar that might be like, for a noob, might be like, what? You just have to not lose your PGP key. Just like if you're using Monero, you just have to not lose your private key. So you have to save your Monero private key for your wallet, and you have to save your PGP key, and you're good to go on XMR Bazaar. So let's go, next slide. So yeah, like I was saying earlier, this is kind of, well, I wanted them to show, I didn't make these slides, I had to, and thank you to Aaliyah who made these slides, oh my God. The people who are helping me out with XMR Bazaar, by the way, I don't know, they're completely anon, and they're just the most amazing people I've ever communicated with, and they've been very, very helpful, they're very idealistic. I have a Narcio who built it, he's the main dev. He also built Kuno. I don't know if anybody here has heard of Kuno, but it's a way to raise money with Monero, kind of like a GoFundMe that's Monero-based. And then I have Aaliyah, who's the main maintainer of the platform. So dealing with all the users, having to boot people if we need to, because they're putting up clearly illegal stuff. Some people are trying to attack us by posting clearly illegal things. The terms and services of Monero are you can buy and sell whatever you want to whoever you want, as long as it's legal in your jurisdiction. And we leave it up to you to figure that out. But if you're going to put, crack on there or heroin, we're pretty sure that that's not legal in any jurisdiction. So we just, by default, delete those types of listings. But where Monero, XMR Bazaar fits in, right? So we had crypto-native dark markets for illegal goods. We have the marketplaces that most of society is used to, these fiat-owned behemoths that are surveilling everyone, where you use the dollar, use the credit card, fiat clearnet markets, and where they often take a large transaction fee, one way or the other, they're milking you. And then you have XMR Bazaar, which is for legal goods and services, but it's done in a peer-to-peer way. And there's great benefit to that, because that allows people to go on, sell whatever they want to sell, and nobody's taking transaction fees. There's no bank taking a transaction fee. There's no platform. You keep all the money you want. You go sell honey on XMR Bazaar, you're keeping all that Monero. Next slide. All right, so I'm going to quickly, what is XMR Bazaar? Its features and some hot picks. Next slide. So what is XMR? Go ahead, next slide. I basically said this already, right? It's non-custodial. We never hold your crypto, no KYC, and it supports the Monero circular economy. I don't know if you guys can see, but we have like a little, some stats up here that pop up when you go to xmrbazaar.com. We have, I think, over 6,000 listings now, and it's only been up for a year. So that's pretty cool. And then I was just told we have 3,000 users, but they're not just people that just like create an account. These are people that then went through the process of generating their PGP keys. So because we could see that, not that we could see their messages, but we could see that they went through that action. And so that means they're probably like legit users if you're going to go through those steps. So it sounds like we have like 3,000 actual users. Next slide. What it is not, it's not decentralized, it's not a dark market. Next slide. What I really see, the value proposition of XMR Bazaar is to be the global trust and reputation engine of the digital cash economy, right? So we have this tool, digital cash. Now we need a way to be able to suss each other out and trust each other when we're making these transactions. So XMR Bazaar does some very obvious things, like you have your profile. You can verify your profile with your X account. That might give you some validity. Somebody sees like, oh, this person with all these followers is that same person. You can write up some things about yourself on your profile. People can come and rate your listings. They can write comments. They can rate you. So it's built with these tools so that trust and reputation can come as people use it and they're identified as honest users. So that when you go and buy something from somebody and you send them, one Monero to send you 5 pounds of Parmesan cheese, if you see that the guy has good ratings, he's probably going to send you the cheese. Okay, next slide. So core features, it's free to list. It's free, there's no transaction fee that's taken. We have PGP encryption built into it. Payment options, direct pay. So like I said, you're buying cheese, you could just send somebody Monero directly, but you don't know if they're gonna send you the cheese, right? So you can use escrow. And our escrow isn't like what you see on the dark markets where they hold your crypto. We never hold your crypto. It uses multi-sig. And there's third-party mediators who are also users, who also have reputations. And you can, basically, it's built in a very seamless way where you can use Monero multi-sig, and it's generated from your browser. It's client-side. We never see anything. We don't hold your keys, and that solves one of the problems. Recently, what I'm announcing today is we just launched bonds. So in addition to escrow, in addition to just native direct pay, users can buy bonds. So if I'm on there and I'm selling my cheese, I could buy a 1 Monero bond. And that means I'm bonded, I'm insured for up to 1 Monero. And now somebody comes and they see that I'm selling this cheese, they see I have a 1 XMR bond, they're gonna buy $100 worth of cheese. They know that if they send me that $100 in Monero and I don't deliver the cheese, that we'll have a mediator jump in, just like in multisig, but now it's even more seamless because they already purchased the bond, and will reimburse the buyer with the money that they had spent and they never got the cheese. So very excited about that. We just launched bonds. We have a feature called Boost because we have to figure out how to monetize this, right? Because we don't take transaction fees. We don't take any platform fees in terms of how people run their listings. We don't charge to list. So we're planning on making money in these ways. So with bonds, Boost, so you can boost your posts. We recently added something called the Monero map. Monero map, if you open that up, it's super cool. It basically shows a map of where the Monero listings are. It shows business listings, right? So if there's places in New Hampshire that accept Monero, please put them on the XMR Bazaar map as a Monero accepting business. And then what we also just added to the map was a way for you in your own profile to mark off very simply if you're okay with being DM'd and put on the map with a general location like New York City for Doug, or some dude who's in Rome and marked as willing to be contacted for purposes of in-person cash to Monero sales. So we'll see how people use that. And actually, you can't really see in that map, but there's been a lot of people jumping up on there. So that becomes a way. I roll into Rome, I pull up XMR Bazaar, I see there's a Monero contact in Rome, because I could search the map, I send him a DM. Next thing you know, he's giving me the tidbits on who accepts Monero around here, and he's telling me where I could go buy some euros with Monero, if not from him. Next slide. Next slide. This is the PGP stuff, super easy to do. Next slide. People can buy direct. I kind of went up through this already. Next slide. The multi-sig, went through that. Next slide. Okay. Oh, this is cool. So we added a way so people receive their DMs through the PGP encryption. So you have to log into Monero, XMR Bazaar. It's super easy, right? If you save your login, and then you'll see your messages. But chances are most people aren't logging into XMR Bazaar every day to check their messages, right? We're not that big yet. But have no fear, we added a way to tie in notifications to your favorite private messenger. So Signal, SimpleX, connected to XMR Bazaar. Now whenever you get a DM, you'll get a Signal message. Somebody comes and purchases something from you, you'll get that DM notifying you that somebody made the purchase, so you don't have to hover over your XMR Bazaar account. Next thing, social media verification, I mentioned that, so you could verify yourself using your X account, and then you get a little badge saying you're verified. Next, here's the map. You can see it a little better. So these are all the geolocated listings, businesses, and the Monero near me posts. And it's getting larger. It's growing, guys. I encourage you guys to add things on there, right? If you don't want to go on and sell stuff yourself, and you know businesses that accept it, please add it to XMR Bazaar. Although I do encourage you to take this a step further and actually start using it, right? That's what this is all about. It's about opting out and using it. That's why I'm most excited about XMR Bazaar, because I think it's going to make the biggest impact compared to anything else I am working on. It's got traction, and people are seeing value in being able to sell their things for digital cash for obvious reasons, right? They sell their bicycle for $200 cash, right? Just like if you did it at a garage sale, And there's value in that. I don't even need to go into details of what that value is, but there's value in being able to just accept cash for the things you offer. And probably what I'm also most excited about is how it's going to be used globally for consulting services, things like that. I could go on XMR Bazaar and I can hire a coder in Afghanistan, wherever. I don't even need to know where they are. They don't need to put their location. I can see that they're offering these services. They do graphic design. They do consulting services, whatever it is. And next thing you know, I'm using Monero anonymously to get somebody to do something for me. Can we just continue to just run through and I'll wrap it up? Boost, go ahead. Bonds, go ahead. Oh, we're adding, this is also announcing today, and we'll be launching any moment. So bonds, we're adding a way to pay with any crypto using Trocador. So all transactions will always settle in Monero. So the people on the receiving end, the vendors, the sellers will always ultimately receive Monero, but the buyers, they can go on with their Dogecoin if they don't have Monero yet. They can send a Dogecoin transaction, it'll be auto-converted into Monero and sent to the receiver. Next slide. This listing just popped up like 2 days ago. Somebody's selling a house in Mendoza, Argentina for Monero. These are popular listings. I mentioned cheese because for whatever reason, cheese is like, it's like Amazon was books, like they started with books. Like XMR Bazaar, the niche seems to be cheese. I don't know. It makes sense. Like the best cheese I've ever eaten in my life has been purchased on XMR Bazaar. Really good Parmesan cheese from a really good region in Italy. People are selling chips from it. People are selling silver. There's exchange listings. So I don't know if anybody here heard of local Bitcoin? All right. Then there was local Monero. It shut down, doesn't exist anymore. XMR Bazaar has all the features that local Monero has on it. So you can now basically do cash to Monero trades on XMR Bazaar. Next, more cheese, I don't know. More stuff, next. Join the XMR Bazaar fundraiser, next. All right, so yeah, we just launched this as well as another way to raise funding. So we are just recently have figured out how to potentially get some funds by offering bonds and boosts, but we're also looking to just get donations from the users, and in exchange for a donation, you'll get a badge on your account, and that, once again, that just probably adds a little bit more trust to you as a person, right? If you donated 1 Monero to XMR Bazaar, you're probably like a legit, like, honest user. And I will wrap it up there, guys. Please check out XMR Bazaar.com. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time.